Chapter 5 Discoveries. Sergeant Davis finished washing his face and took a quick glance at his digital clock, which displayed 7:55 a.m. He was already late. He started to rush, shaving his neck, and nicked the side as blood began to slither out. The other day ended empty and without any solid leads or answers. After he cleared the crime area, Sergeant Davis worked with his team to gather all the data they possibly could after closing the scene, and couldn't find anything noteworthy. Interviewing with the restaurant owner proved to be a dead end. The hotel across the street was clueless, and there weren't any bystanders around that offered anything of use. It wasn't until late in the evening that Davis decided to head home to take care of his son, but he knew that today the department needed him more than ever. He looked into the mirror at his brown, tired, and bloodshot eyes, and then saw his son's figure appear in the background. His son looked rather upset as he signed to him. "You were going to work again?" he signed. "Yes, Jake," Davis responded. He never truly learned how to sign well, but his son could read his lips. "You promised we'd spend time together." Davis sighed, put the razor down, and turned to his son. "I know," he signed. "But," he spoke, "there was an incident the other day. The station is going to need everyone they can get." Jake's expression grew to sadness, and he took his crystal blue eyes away from the mirror and towards the ground. "I thought you were on vacation," he signed while not bothering to look up. Sam knelt to the ground and took Jake's face in his hands. He looked deep into his blue eyes and rubbed his large ears. Even at 8, he looked just like his mother, and Sam hated that. "I know it's been hard, but I have 5 more days left. We will spend time together, I promise." Sam recognized the sound of the police chief's voice playing on the television in the background. "Yes, I'm sorry. What was it that you asked?" Sam looked up towards the television, still hugging his son. The chief was standing up behind a podium in front of cameras, and undoubtedly the press was sitting out of view. "Sorry," Sam heard the faint voice of a reporter in the background. "Are there any leads to who is behind the shooting?" "The NYPD is collaborating with New Rochelle and FBI units, as it is believed that the suspects may be residing within NYPD jurisdiction. We have no current, useful information on who has been involved in the attack, but the investigation is ongoing." Jake tapped Sam's shoulder. "Hold on a minute," he said, already missing the next reporter's question. The chief shifted uneasily on the podium for a brief second. His large nose flinched. "Right. Well," he began, "with the information we currently have, we suspect the incident to be terrorist-related and radical in nature." "What the hell?" Sam shot up from the ground and stormed towards the television, leaving his son sitting on the ground, alone. "Thank you for your time. That will be all the questions for today," the chief said before the scene cut back to the news reporters. "Terrorist incident?" Sam said angrily. "Why is he lying to the public like that? I gotta get over to the station." Sam ran from room to room, grabbing everything he needed for work. Jake walked into Sam's bedroom, watching him gather his things and strap on his boots. Sam looked towards his son while he was tying his boots. "Today's the last day, I promise, Jake." "Sure," Jake signed. Sam rubbed Jake on the head before grabbing his light NYPD jacket and rushed out of the apartment and locked the door, leaving Jake alone standing in his bedroom. Maria Valdez stood up from her chair when she noticed Sergeant Davis had entered their department's office. Another officer next to her stood up as well. "He's here? Isn't he supposed to be on vacation?" Maria watched the sergeant walk briskly past the other officers and over towards their area. She leaned her thick body closer to the officer and began to speak in a low voice. "Ever since his wife up and left, disappeared, he's done nothing but work. Guy's like a robot." "Well, what do we tell him?" the officer asked with some panic in his voice. "He's not going to be happy." Sergeant Davis was nearly upon them. "Hey, Sarge," Maria said enthusiastically, ignoring the officer who conveniently walked off in the distance. "Valdez," he began, looking over his department, "what do you have for me?" Valdez swallowed hard, and Davis immediately noticed her discomfort. "What is it?" "Well, Sarge," Maria grabbed some paperwork off of her desk and motioned for another officer to walk over to her, who also handed her a folder stuffed with even more papers. "We attempted to get the camera information, but were unable to retrieve anything. It was all ripped." She handed Davis the papers and folder, which he briefly combed through. "Ripped by who?" he asked. "Sergeant Davis." A voice cut through the noise of the room, which immediately died down as everyone dropped what they were doing. Davis turned to the doorframe to see a tall Chief DeLeggio's tall, thin, tree-like body and bald head glistening in the pale light of his department. "Sir." Davis stiffened. DeLeggio looked at the room of beaming officers looking eagerly at him. "We all have work to do," he said, and everyone in the room immediately understood and began working once more. "Davis, walk with me a moment. To my office, would you?" "Yes, sir," Davis said obediently before turning towards Maria. "Find out who ripped him." Davis walked through the halls of the NYPD headquarters with the police chief, which were bursting with productivity and movement from the recent shooting. "This whole thing is blowing off, Sergeant," DeLeggio said. Sergeant Davis remained silent, watching the comings and goings of those around him. "We have half of New England ready to go at each other's throats again," he continued. "Is that why you went on the news and blamed terrorism?" Davis asked, with immediate regret, realizing too late who he was talking to. But the chief was calm. "Ah, I see you have witnessed my little PSA. It's better to pin this on an enemy that the public knows, rather than one that they have forgotten, especially since we don't have our ducks in a row as it is," DeLeggio said with a relaxed expression. Davis stopped walking for a moment. "But lying about something that goes up this many levels?" he said, hinting towards the feds. DeLeggio let out a long sigh. "Sam, this brings me to why I need to speak with you. I want you to go back home. You are on leave. You take it. Go back to your son." DeLeggio clasped Davis on the shoulder. "And I'm pulling your unit off the case. It was never supposed to be on it in the first place. You were called in as backup, nothing more. Understood?" Davis looked DeLeggio hard in the eyes, but merely played his part. "You got it, Chief," he said. "That's a good man," DeLeggio said happily while standing in front of his office door. "Get home, Sergeant. I don't want to see you here until your vacation is up." "I'll just grab my things in my department and be on my way, sir," Davis said. The chief smiled warmly and shut his office door. Davis immediately turned on his heel and made his way back to his unit. Maria approached Sergeant Davis while he entered his office and grabbed a fistful of his jacket. "Sarge," she began. "What's up, Maria?" he responded while heading out the door. "Feds pulled the footage. They have all the tapes." Davis stopped and thought for a moment, then turned to Maria. "I want you to keep on this case, but keep it quiet. Keep me informed through my cell. You have my number, right?" Maria nodded. "Good. We have some shell casings. Figure out if we can trace them," Sergeant Davis said while he walked out of the office. "Where are you going?" Maria asked while he walked away. "To see an old friend," Davis said happily. Victor pulled up to a white, modern-styled apartment complex in Queens, near the Manhattan border. The sun was beginning to set, and the sky was painted a brilliant deep pink and red color. "We're here," Victor stated, getting out and opening Frank's door for him. The other bodyguard followed as well and made his way to the buzzers and began buzzing Tony's apartment number. Frank knew that, if Tony was somehow involved in this, he wouldn't be dumb enough to run back to his apartment. But he wanted to check something. Look for any sort of clue that could steer him in the direction he needed to go. "Push it," Frank said after Victor kept trying the buzzer. Victor understood and took a thin metallic bar out of his jacket and pushed it through the side of the door near the handle, and lifted upwards. His large size made it appear like it involved literally no effort. The door clicked and opened slowly. Victor and the other bodyguard entered first, and Frank entered in after them. The lobby was empty, but for one man who was attempting to retrieve his mail from the apartment mailboxes. He looked stunned, and as if he was frozen in place, still gripping the key to his box, which was in the keyhole. "He's apartment 44C, Frank said. "For precaution, Victor and I will take the elevator. Ed, you take the stairs. Meet us on the 4th floor. Ed nodded his head and made his way up the staircase, while Victor and Frank entered the elevator, leaving the stunned resident still frozen in place in the lobby. The elevator hit the 4th floor with a ding, and the doors opened to a long hallway. 44C should be a few doors down, Frank said, trying to remember where his nephew's apartment was located. After a few moments, they came across a white door with a black number 44C in the middle. Ed soon met up with them and gave a nod to signal he was ready, as he placed his hand on the other side of his brown leather jacket near his pistol. Victor knocked calmly a few times, with no answer. Victor then got the small metal bar out once more and placed it into the doorframe. "Hold it," Frank said. Frank felt around in his pocket and grasped onto a small golden key, a key that Tony had given to him a year ago for safekeeping. Tony was Frank's nephew, his brother's son, and not known to many, Frank was his godfather as well. Frank trusted Tony, which is why he felt this whole turn of events sat rather strange, unless Tony's loyalties had changed of heart in recent days. But regardless, Frank knew Tony kept a tight ship, and there was no way Victor was getting through his apartment door like that. Frank slid the key in and turned. A few satisfying clicks sounded off, and he turned the door handle. A dark, shrouded room greeted their eyes. All the windows were covered by black curtains, but all else seemed typical of an apartment owned by Tony Cingotti. Everything was in its place, and tucked away neatly. Black leather couches had not a stain or a thing on them. The black and white rug on the floor was spotless. His glass table was so clean it appeared as if there was no glass there at all, but Frank was slightly surprised to notice all the weapons that were out and at the ready. There was a shotgun propped up against the wall to his left, and once Ed flicked the lights on, he noticed an MP5 sitting in the hallway. "Looks like he was expecting something," Victor grunted as he leaned against the wall. Frank remained silent and continued to glance around. Everything was spotless. "I want you two to look around and see if there's anything that could help us, or that is out of place. Way ahead of you," Ed replied, already looking through Tony's bathroom. Frank looked over towards Victor. "Would you get off the wall?" Knowing how Tony hated dirtied walls, Victor grunted and two started looking through the apartment. After what felt like an hour, no one seemed to find anything of use, until Victor piped up. "Hey, boss, you know that Chevy he was so proud of?" he said, sliding into a kitchen table seat uncomfortably across from Frank. "Those keys are missing. All the others are here." Frank remained silent and placed his head in his hands inside. He was growing tired. Frank got up and slid his finger across Tony's granite countertop and opened the garbage drawer under the sink. The garbage was nearly empty, but Frank noticed something rather strange sitting inside. A crinkled-up McDonald's bag. "Tony doesn't eat McDonald's," he said to himself, grabbing the bag and opening it up. There was nothing inside but a receipt for 3 breakfast sandwiches. "He was never one to eat that crap," Victor said. "Known him quite a long time. Never once stepped foot in a store." Frank was about to throw the bag away when he glanced once more at the receipt. Read past the day and the time, but noticed something peculiar. He saw the purchase was made with a MasterCard, with an account number's last 4 digits reading 5585. "What is it?" Victor asked. "Victor, Ed, let's get out of here. We're going to our accountant."